I don't have. We are.
I will. Hi, welcome. Welcome to the Semi Sages of the Pages. I'm Teresa.
I'm Morgan.
And oh, go ahead. You do it.
And today we're going to learn about underpants, right?
Yes, we are learning all about underpants.
Yeah, because we're authors and we like to talk about strange things. And sometimes that involves underpants. Stay tuned for what kinds. Or whose. The better question, whose underpants?
Whose underpants? No, in all seriousness, what we are talking about is the top 7 best-selling books so far of 2025. And the most interesting part about this is that we've actually already read 2 of the first pages in previous episodes.
Mhm.
Hey, Erin, how's it going? So that was really fascinating when we were looking to see what they were, and we're like, hey, we've already done these.
Mhm.
So one of the best-selling ones is Onyx Storm, which is, as we all know, it is the first book of the, I guess it's the Onyx Storm series by Rebecca Yarros. And it's the romantasy about a dragon fighter, a dragon rider. I guess dragon rider would be a better phrase, about a dragon rider falling in love and defending her kingdom from both enemies from without the kingdom and enemies within the kingdom as well. So great series. We really highly recommend it. So Onyx Storm, #1 bestseller of 2025.
Which, just listen to that, authors and readers, but really listen. It tells you that you can repeat tropes and story ideas and do them with your own flair and voice, and it works. And don't let people tell you that your idea has already been done before. Because I think that's so sad to me. There's people with these brilliant ideas, and you tell somebody your story idea, and they're like, well, that reminds me of da 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 da. And so because it reminds you of da da da, then you think, well, I guess we won't do that. Instead of looking at how you can make it your own and your own flair, and building on the fact that, well, if it worked once before, then it'll work again, right? Or it could work again, at least has the potential to work again. So what I hear from that is it's okay to take classic things people love, like dragons and romance and fantasy. And for all of you romance fantasy writers out there, go for it. Like, do it. Ride the dragon.
And romantasy is hot. I just literally came from WonderCon, and I passed out over 1,500 bookmarks. And Morgan will tell you my favorite thing whenever somebody comes to the table is, hi, what do you like to read? Because I like to point people at the directions of whatever books I have on the table. Romantasy. I read fantasy. I read romance. I read romantasy. I read fantasy. It's so popular now. So go ahead.
Well, Erin makes a really good comment. Like, she says stuff that's not similar to things on the market are hard to sell, because when you go to sell something, you have to comp it anyway. So there's almost like a catch-22.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they want it to be like things, but not too much like things. And so I think as authors, it can feel defeating, just trying to find that sweet spot, because it can feel like you're catching one side of that argument. And I think that can be really difficult to push through. At least it was for me.
Mm-hmm.
My first novel was like that, Designers, and it would catch a lot of flack from each side.
That's interesting. That's a really interesting concept, because I've heard that from other authors. They're deeply concerned. Oh, I have this great idea, but it's already been done.
Mm.
But I haven't heard a lot of true concern from readers of, I've already read this. I feel like readers are totally fine with yet another vampire and werewolf book.
Right. So I think there's like this double standard in the industry. And what we find out, because Teresa runs a publishing company and we get to help with that, and we go sell her books basically all over, we find out that it's easy to sell books. So, like, if you're there and Teresa's like, it's not easy to sell books.
Oh, it's so easy to sell books.
You pretty much sold out this weekend, right?
I sold out this weekend. I sold 168, mostly books, in 2.5 days.
Yeah.
168.
So a lot of like showing up, being in the life space. Oh, read dirty to me. We're matching. Fits with romantasy. We all like the smut.
Yeah. But it's easy to sell books because you're right. It's the comps. And we talked about this before. It's the emotional parts. When you say a genre, when you say a comp, you're not talking about the plots. You're talking about how these things make readers feel. And that's what you're tapping into when you try to sell books.
I love that. And that's where genre starts again too.
Exactly.
Like, what did you start with? Like strong women, dragons riders, fighting. I think just you get excited. You're like, oh, I've loved those stories before. I'm going to love this one too. And so you already come preloaded with positivity. So it's no wonder that it's number one. So what's number two?
Number two is The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. And I know nothing about this. Morgan, do you know anything about this?
Yeah, I love her podcast. She's great. So yeah, she's great. She does a lot of like self-help books and awareness. She runs a podcast that's very like down to earth and talking about real issues. And so Let Them it's like a life theory that's based on also other writing, but it's just like this idea of let people think whatever they want about you. Like stop worrying. And so it's just very practical. This is how we survive. I mean, she's a great podcaster, a really authentic author. And I think why she resonates, at least with me and the people I know that love her, is I think she talks about how it is. Like she's not afraid to admit that it can be lonely and difficult. And she's a woman who's in her 50s, I think, late 40s, early 50s, I think. And so she's talking about some of the issues that we go through at our age because we can, feel seen. And I think she does it in a way that's just very authentic and raw and relatable. And her writing style is the same. So it didn't surprise me at all. I have lots of friends at work who talk about her and her podcast in this book. So I haven't read it yet. I just know the basic premise and that.
Well, and it's the second bestseller. And I think another key to this is that she already had a platform. So another key to a book becoming a bestseller is you already have a fan base.
Mm-hmm. And name recognition is really big, especially in the self-help space, right?
Exactly. So putting together, and presumably, the other nice thing about this, presumably because she has a podcast, she's already done a lot of this research. So it's not like she's starting from scratch on, I have an idea and now I have to do all this research and everything else to put it together. And again, haven't read the book. I'm not familiar with the podcast, but presumably she's just restating a lot of the stuff that she's said in her podcast.
Yeah. Well, and that she's read too. Like that surprised my friends. They were talking about that. They're like, a lot of her theories aren't even her own theories. She's famous for the 5-second rule, and that is her own theory. But since then, I think she's really good at using her platform to repackage and create meaning out of those new ideas. And I think that's interesting for us as authors too, thinking about the power of repackaging good ideas, which goes back to what you always say. You're always like, there's never a new idea.
There isn't. And how many times have you read a self-help book and been like, I knew this, but I forgot it. Or I needed that reminder in order to keep going.
Yeah. I feel like whenever I'm in a conversation with you or anybody else who's inspirational, like Aaron or in the chat, I'm always like, oh yeah, that's great. That's great. And I love that reinforcement. I think great self-help does that. It reinforces what you kind of already, the way you're already leaning, how you already feel, and where you want to go.
Exactly. All right. Ready to move on to number 3?
Heck yeah.
All right. Number 3 was surprising. And it's why we started this episode talking about underpants.
Because they just wrote a whole book about underpants and people love it.
Right? That's true. So this, and it's number 3. It's a graphic novel. And I actually pulled it up on Amazon to check the sample and kind of see what it looks like. It's truly a very simple graphic novel for children, and it's titled Dog Man Big Gem Begins by Dave Pilkey. And one of the reasons this is such a bestseller is that Dave Pilkey is the creator of Captain Underpants.
So it's just part of the Captain Underpants series that just keeps going, because you too can be the captain of your own underpants.
Well, I think this ties into a lot of kids are reading this, but their parents grew up reading Captain Underpants. So there's, again, the name recognition, but also the trust. I grew up reading this author. I adored him. So I want to give that to my child in maybe a more up-to-date, maybe a more modern way with a graphic novel.
Well, I love the idea of it being about the experience. I read this thing from the New York Times about someone, the author, I can't remember his name, but he took his daughter to Snow White. And, there's been all this controversy about the Snow White movie, right? And he said, put all that aside. I get why Disney does live remakes. And his whole thing was because it's about an experience. Because I went to Snow White when I was little, and then I got to take my daughter. And so it was about the experience of a shared cultural identity.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because growing up, Cinderella was my favorite movie. And when they came out with the live one, my dad actually called and he was like, hey, I wanted to let you know I went and saw the live Cinderella movie. And I really enjoyed it. And it made me think of you and how much you used to love that movie.
Yeah. So some of it's just playing on nostalgia, which as authors, if we can think about that too, the power of that.
Right.
Because I think really good publishing houses do a great job of utilizing that.
Absolutely. And I think Captain Underpants, great example of nostalgia. The other reason that this is a bestseller is that it is part of a series. It is the 13th graphic novel. And they always say, not always, but a really good way to become a bestseller or to sell a lot of copies, and it's a mistake that I've made, is to write in a series because it just maximizes your advertising budget and everything else. So, all right, number 4 is Deep End by Ollie Hazelwood.
Deep End. That sounds kind of sexual, but I'll bet it's not.
Again, another one that I am not super familiar with. It is a romance. So
we're not surprised. Romance readers are voracious.
They really are. And this one is a contemporary romance. And it's about 2 athletes competing with each other and then competing in the bedroom as well.
See, we love our tropes.
Yeah. So this is about the.
Is it swimming? Then I take it.
It is swimming. Yeah. So this is really about the trope of the couple who come together just for sex. And then it turns into an actual relationship. So, yeah. But you're absolutely right. It is voracious readers. Ollie Hazelwood is a New York Times best-selling author. And that's another reason why these books tend to sell really well. So, yeah. Anything else on this one? We've talked about romance so much.
I love to read these books and then never admit that I read them. I'm one of those people, judge away.
Well, and then if we're going to change things up, we have another fiction book. This is the 5th bestseller, and it is The Crash by Frida McFadden. And this is a thriller. So this is a pregnant woman who is running away from her life. And she ends up getting stranded and rescued, but is she really rescued? Or is she in a more precarious situation? And she's pregnant. I mean, talk about, so one thing we want to do as authors, we want to up the tension. We want to make the worst thing happen for that character and then make it happen again and again and again. And we just keep doing that over and over and over. So imagine you are running away from your life into a snowstorm. How can we make that even worse? Well, let's make you pregnant. All right. Now you're into a snowstorm. How can I make that even worse? Well, you get into a car crash. Okay, how can I make that even worse? You broke your ankle. Pregnant, snowstorm, broken ankle, car crash. Now let's start a book.
Put them under stakes, 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 stakes. And now I care.
Yep, exactly. Now you're like, oh, how is she going to get out of this? And then sometimes as the author,
Like save the cat piling on. But the protagonist is the cat.
Yeah. Well, and then sometimes as the author, the hard thing is that you're like, I don't know, how am I going to get you out of this?
Yeah, I feel like without it being corny, you know?
Right.
Or overdone.
Or you've got like, look, they managed to find a cell phone in the snow that is connected to the police. Problem solved.
And I hate those authors that have the lazy endings. They're my least favorite. I get mad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I throw the books down and I'm like, no.
That's a really good point too. And then the last one that we're talking about is another one that we did the first page on, and that was Atomic Habits. So Atomic Habits is a very, very popular self-help book about setting up daily habits in order to move your life forward.
Going strong for so long. So 2025 tells us the self-help genre, which we knew was hot, is still hot. Romance and fantasy are still hot. And children's lit is here to stay.
Exactly. Exactly. The other thing that I was going to add to this is, and it was something Morgan brought up about the stakes. Your books have to have a strong, solid ending, or no one is going to recommend them. If nobody recommends them, then you will not be a bestseller. Word of mouth is a huge, huge part of creating bestsellers. And that's part of the reason Atomic Habits is so incredibly popular, and why so many people have read it is because people keep recommending it, because the techniques in there work.
Yeah. And it's clear, and it's got a great personal story.
Exactly.
That personal story is so well done. And I feel like you read that and it pulls on the emotions. And it's a real person who's overcome adversity. When you look at that adversity, I feel like that's so powerful, whether it's in our fiction or in real life. When you see somebody who's overcoming real adversity in a way that you think, how, if they can do it, I can do it. They have something to teach me. And certainly people who go through adversity and do have a lot to teach. Well, we all have adversity and we all have a lot to teach each other. But I feel like the great books do it in such a poetic way, right? Almost like we're friends. We become friends with the authors or the protagonists.
Very, very true. Very true. I like how you said that. All right. Any aha moments or any key takeaways about this?
I mean, it makes me hopeful that whatever you're working on, keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep finding that creative space. All
Race
right.
to Rejection. Do we do our shout out to Race to Rejection?
We did our shout outs with the winners last week. However, we should remind everybody, put in those rejections. We had a great question on the Discord today. Question was, does entering into contests and not winning or not placing in those contests, does that count as a rejection? Absolutely. Absolutely it does. The point of Race to Rejection is to celebrate rejection, to give you a space and give you cheerleaders that are cheering you on for trying, for putting yourself out there, because rejection sucks and it hurts, but we're standing behind you, ready to give you hugs and cheers and whatnot and say, congratulations, you did it, you tried. And that's amazing.
And the other thing I would mention as we kind of fade out is that we're moving into a direction of peak creativity. So if you have ideas for the Sages, we're very open to that. And we're open to ideas about creativity and what you would like to see us do more of. And any ideas that you have, we love suggestions, and we're excited to try to learn and grow and keep hanging out with everyone.
Yeah, we've got some good ideas kind of for some future direction. And we're still definitely refining them, but it's gonna be
yeah,
fun.
we love your feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Anything else? No. If you want to chat with us more, jump on our Discord. If you're in the Los Angeles area, we will be at the LA Festival of Books. So feel free to come over and say hi. We'd love to chat with you. And that was really fun, by the way, for everybody who are Patreons and fans of the Semi-Sages. Appreciate everyone coming by and saying hi at WonderCon. It was a blast. So I think that's it. I think that's a wrap. All right. Take care, everybody.
Hope you write something inspirational today.